When I was a kid, I was baffled by the stupidity of the Old Testament Israelites. They left slavery in Egypt after some of the most incredible demonstrations of divine intervention you can imagine. They saw the 10 plagues, and the dry path through the Red Sea, and the destruction of the Egyptian army. They watched the walls of Jericho go down. Why would these idiots worship idols? My problem is that I thought of idols in a way that was way too concrete. To me, it meant bowing down to small figurines sitting on the mantle, or throwing children into the fires at the feet of some large, mean-looking statue. It wasn't until I read the book The Source by James Michener that I understood Israelite idolatry. They never stopped believing in God. The problem was that they had too small a view of who he was. They knew him as a God who saves his people by turning off the sun and turning water into blood, a God of the wilderness who could provide meat and manna, and could bring water out of the rocks. He's pretty spectacular, but what does he know about farming? The ancient Israelites learned how to farm by watching their Canaanite neighbors. First you plant, then you irrigate and fertilize, and then you appease a fertility god in some way, and then the plant will grow, and then you harvest and winnow. In their minds, the plants would no more grow if they didn't water them than they would if they didn't appease the fertility god who specialized in this sort of thing. If you step into their headspace, their idolatry makes a little more sense. Just like ours. The Israelites no more saw their idolatry when they worshipped idols than we do when we shop at Walmart. Am I exaggerating for effect? Perhaps, perhaps not. Tim Keller talks about idolatry in terms of making a good thing into an ultimate thing. Good things include sports and spaghetti, movies and art, freedom and literature and pleasure and work, beauty, youth, health, wealth, trees, and kittens. God made all these good things, and then he placed human beings above them, above the good things. He did this by making us in his image. Genesis 1 verse 26 says, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the good things." A temple is where heaven and earth come together. In the temple of God's good creation, we, human beings, take the place of that carved and gilded statue that's used in pagan worship. These were the images of various gods of weather or fertility or war. We are the image of the one true God. The language of being made in the image of tells its ancient audience the significance of human beings. This means we're a big deal, but we are a big deal only because of our connection to God. We're in his image, and that's important. God is, of course, the ultimate thing, the thing by which all things are measured and understood. In Keller's language, idolatry is when we replace the ultimate thing, God, with a good thing, and make it an ultimate thing. When God is moved from his spot, we are no longer the image of the God, so we fall from our position as image bearers down into the pile of good things. We become a thing among other things. Because our position is dependent on God, we can only keep our position if God is where he's supposed to be. This is why idolatry always ends in dehumanization. The Canaanites made fertility an ultimate thing. Without the revelation of Scripture, this makes some sense, because fertility is really important to ancient civilizations. It's really important that the land produces bounteous harvests and that the livestock and the people have numerous healthy offspring. Fertility is a good thing, but when it's made into an ultimate thing, it becomes a harsh and cruel God. Children were eventually sacrificed on the altars to the fertility gods. If it gets the crops to grow, the death of a few children is acceptable. Idolatry always leads to dehumanization and human sacrifice. The Pharisees in Jesus' day were idolaters too. Their idol was the long list of laws that they created in order to protect the law of God. Again, their reasoning makes some sense. We went into exile because we disobeyed God's law, so we should make sure that we never break God's law again. We can do this by creating a fence around the law with a bunch of smaller laws. God's law said that people shouldn't work on the Sabbath. The Pharisees went so far as to ban Sabbath spitting, because it was irrigation and that was farming and that was work. If you keep the smaller laws, you can't break the bigger one, right? But the good thing, keeping the Sabbath, had become an idol to which human beings could be sacrificed. We can see this in their condemnation of Jesus for healing a lame man on the Sabbath. Jesus' response to them gets at the core of their idolatry. He said, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." The Sabbath was a good thing. Human beings are above good things because we're made in God's image. God isn't uptight about idolatry just because he wants all the attention. That's what I thought when I was a kid. He's uptight about idolatry because of the effects it has on the people whom he loves. All the good things were made for humanity, not humanity for the good things. Pleasure, fertility, wealth were made for us, not we for them. Our culture is full of idol worship that results in dehumanization and human sacrifice. Idols in the West include the economy, where productivity and profits are always in ascendancy, no matter what the human or environmental costs. Cheap t-shirts. In our consumer culture, we need cheap products. We need cheap t-shirts so that we can afford to replace them with the ever-changing fads and fashions. And we are unwilling to pay for the actual cost of the t-shirt. We want them cheap so somebody else has to pay. It's usually the environment and the workers, image bearers of God, who live and work in deplorable conditions to make t-shirts. Here's another disturbing trend in our society. It's a good thing for children to be healthy, without genetic defects. But in some countries, this good thing has been made into an ultimate thing. Iceland has all but eliminated Down syndrome through prenatal testing and the abortion of fetuses exhibiting the chromosomal abnormality. When health, a good thing, replaces God, the ultimate thing, people are degraded and sometimes must die. Idolatry always results in dehumanization and often in human sacrifice. One of the dominant idols in our time is freedom, individual autonomy. The primacy of individual freedom is one of the few things that both sides of the political spectrum agree on, albeit in different ways. Again, freedom is a good thing, but we've made it into a god. So rather than just name it and call it out, do a little thinking about freedom yourself. Don't just point at the other guys and say, oh, look at, they're worshiping freedom. Look at how your team worships freedom and the resultant human sacrifice. Could be an interesting exercise. I will say that striving for rights and freedoms used to mean pushing against injustice, but now it often comes at the expense of justice. And things will only get worse until we reject freedom as an ultimate thing. The problem is that something has to be in the place of the ultimate thing. And as long as it's a good thing and not God, we will experience injustice and dehumanization. Whenever you see another person being treated as something less than the creature that God crowned with glory, see if you can't figure out what's the good thing that's been made into an ultimate thing. My next video on this topic will be one of the idols that we sometimes have in church. Thank you, and we'll see you there.